Thank you for joining us for this episode. Today, we're going to be talking about the future of optometric technology and inventing stuff for optometrists on the Optometric Insights show. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Optometric Insights show. Today, we're with Dr. Fayiz Mahgoub, and Fayiz lives in Fort Collins, Colorado. And I met him several years ago when he was an optometry student. And he's taken this interesting path within optometry, not only with practice, but also he started to really get into the technology of eye care. And he's invented a couple of products. We've used actually both of them, or maybe he's got more than the two in our practice. And so I'm super stoked to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us, Fayiz.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave.
Yeah, my man. So tell me about this interest in eye care technology. When did this kind of all come about? Was it while you were still a student, or after you got into practice, were you just like, hey, we need something like this, and you couldn't find it?
It's actually a little bit of both. I was always one of those kids that loved to tinker around with things when I was a kid, and it was something that I didn't really pursue much when I started looking into career paths. I went the healthcare route, but it was always something on the back of my mind. And it was something kind of that was rekindled during my optometry school days. One of my professors was into Silicon Valley, used to work for Apple, was telling me about the different things that are happening in other parts of healthcare, and actually encouraged me to join a hackathon that was happening at a nearby school. And that's kind of when I got bit by the leadership bug.
What in this hackathon? What did you do in this hackathon?
I basically got paired with 5 people that I didn't know. We were asked to find a solution to a problem that existed, and then over 24 hours, develop a solution and then pitch it to a group of judges. So it was kind of like a cram session almost for a test. Mm-hmm. At the end of it, you get to present. Ended up winning the hackathon, so I was pretty jazzed about that.
Do you remember what that project was? What the problem was?
Yes, I think it was along the lines of a company that would help startups essentially get established, from setting them up with employer consultants and kind of being an ecosystem for startups, basically.
That's cool. Yeah. So fast forward, now you're in practice, and why don't you tell us about the things that you have come up with so far, and how you go about getting something like that into the marketplace?
Yeah, the first device that I actually developed was inspiration for it was when I was a 4th-year student on rotations, and I was doing the insertion and removal training with patients at a specialty lens practice. And I had a really difficult time with a few patients who had trouble getting sclerals in their eye for a variety of different reasons. And I learned that it got to the point for some patients where they had to be taken out of the lenses because they just couldn't insert them. And I thought that was a real shame. And you look at all the different clinical hurdles you have to jump through to fit a patient at the end of the day for them not to be able to wear the lenses. Because of that, I felt that was, a real waste. So I started learning about different technologies like 3D printing and CAD design, and developed a product that can help address some of the issues that I saw with insertion and removal. And then from there, I reached out to some colleagues that I respected to get their ideas on it, and just kind of went step by step and finally brought it to market when I felt like it was ready.
Yeah. So to give an idea of what this is, with scleral lens insertion, some patients, they need to use both of their hands when they're inserting the lens. And what we'll do is, if it's okay with you, Fayiz, I'd like us to put a link to either your website or a picture or something of the product, just so people can get an idea of what this looks like, if that's okay to put it in the show notes. But a lot of times there's these little devices, and the patient has to get really close to the table to put something like this in, and they're strapped. But with your device, what's really cool about it is it has this telescoping arm, so you can get it up higher, and it can be positioned at the height for the patient, but then it can telescope back down so the patient can set it aside for storage, and it's not like this big thing in the middle of everything. Where did that concept of like the telescoping arm come in?
For me, I just looked at how I insert soft lenses. I typically do them in the bathroom when I'm standing up. And so it felt like scleral lenses, what's the reason that it's not as easy to do the same thing? So I wanted to create something that from a convenience standpoint would be just as convenient as inserting soft lenses. And then later on, I actually discovered after sharing some of the prototypes with some colleagues that some of their patients actually needed to be able to insert their lenses while standing because they had back problems. So it was one of those things where it kind of fits two different needs for two different folks. The people that just want to be able to insert their lenses more efficiently, in the bathroom after they wash their hands and just put their lenses on. And then there's the folks that actually need that ability to be able to insert them when they're standing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And then, the second thing that you developed revolved around taking photography in the exam room. A couple of years ago, I spent about $20,000 on a slit lamp that had a camera built into it. I'm a little upset at you that you weren't around when I bought that $20,000 slit lamp with that camera. But here you've come up with a solution that's really affordable. Tell us, what is convenient about this device that you came up with, and how did you decide to go about doing it in this manner?
Yeah, for me, it was actually going back to a real world problem that I was facing as well. I wanted to grow the dry eye practice, and I found it difficult to communicate effectively what I was seeing in the slit lamp to patients. I can kind of just see their eyes glazing over when I'm talking about meibomian glands and all these intricate things that they may have never really seen firsthand before. So I felt that if I could show them exactly what I was looking at, that I could really, make more of an impact on them and help them buy into the solutions that I was recommending. So I looked at a lot of the different options out there. There are some, really great options that are built into slit lamps. But, that, like you mentioned, is, cost prohibitive. And it wasn't something that the practice I was at was willing to invest in at the time. So I started exploring different options, and ultimately came down to the cameras in phones now are just about as good as any that's out there that's purpose built for kind of a niche product. So again, I went back to the CAD and 3D printing and looking at different ways of prototyping a solution that would work, and threw a lot of time and effort at it. And then, gradually it came to be something that I felt would be reliable, that you could use on a day-to-day basis efficiently within your normal workflow.
Yeah. So, I think different people probably are using this in different ways. We've purchased one for each of our practices. And then what we did in our practice is we went out and we purchased, a used offline iPhone 6 or iPhone 7. It's not an internet device for us. It's just a camera. That's what we're using it. So we were really able to get the entire system, depending on what you pay for the phone, and then, purchasing the case and the adapter from you. We're able to get something for, under $500 really is what it boils down to. If you already have a phone, maybe an older phone in the office or something, you could already use that. So it's this inexpensive way to get it. And then what he's done that's really unique is he's 3D printed these adapters for our slit lamp. And then we have a different size adapters depending on the slit lamp that we have. And then we just take our unit from room to room. Really for $500 or whatever it is, if you've got 2 or 3 exam rooms, it's not super expensive compared to that $15,000, $20,000 slit lamp that I had to get one of these in every single room. So it's really kind of a slick way of incorporating photography real quickly into the practice. And I appreciate what you said about sharing it with patients, because I found with my fancy camera, it was really difficult for me to have the patient turn around and face the computer and everything. Whereas I just take these photographs with the slit lamp on the iPhone camera that we have, and then I just turn it over and I show the patient. I'm sure that's probably what you do and what you've done, but it's kind of this really slick type of way. What have you heard from other people as to how they're using the devices that you've invented?
Yeah, different doctors have different kind of mindsets for what they're wanting to do with imaging. Some doctors are wanting to create videos that they can share on social media to educate patients. Some doctors are wanting to take images to publish in articles and posters. And some doctors are wanting to use it primarily for patient care, showing patients clinical signs that they see, and also just billing for the things that we see commonly in the anterior segment to generate revenue for the practice. So I think different doctors have different priorities for what they want to use it for, but it's nice that it's versatile enough to use it in those different ways.
Yeah. So just from a practice management standpoint, if you do slit lamp photography, you can bill for the photograph. I recommend getting an ABN ahead of time, an advanced beneficiary notice, informing the patient that you're going to be charging them for the photograph, informing the patient it may go to their deductible and so forth. And then setting up a system within the phone and then the computer that you're using to be able to convert the photos over into the patient's chart. And there's various different ways that people are doing that. What are some of the ways that you've heard people are saving the document or the photos for the patients? How have you heard people use that?
Yeah, there's a couple of different apps that are out there that can let you transmit. I'm actually working on a solution that would do that for you automatically, where when you take a photo, pops up on your desktop so you can automatically attach it to your EMR.
Cool.
And that way it makes the whole workflow more efficient.
That's awesome. So, buddy, what's next? Like, what else have you been thinking about? What's bothering you right now, and what are you going to invent for the future? And you don't have to divulge anything that you're in the works on, but if you're comfortable sharing, like, what are some things that are bothering you from a technology standpoint right now?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think one of the things that's really missing out there is interoperability. You have a lot of different devices in the office, but none of them really talk to each other, and they typically don't talk to your EMR. So I'm talking with some partners in the eye care space that are already working on that issue and seeing ways to collaborate, because I think one of the things that companies sometimes are focused on is bringing their device out, but they don't necessarily know from the provider's perspective that experience of how that device plays in within the whole ecosystem within that practice. So I want to make sure that the devices that I have are things that can fit in seamlessly into a practice and enhance efficiency, as opposed to being kind of a standalone thing.
Yeah, that is so true. If we were to invent all of the equipment right now within the eye care space with regards to electronic health records and everything, I don't think we would put up with the inner workings of the systems the way that they are, right? That I have an Optos and a Zeiss OCT, and I have an OptiView, and I have a different company's a Medmont topographer, or whatever it is that you have in your office. And I can't look at all that stuff in one place. That's such a huge problem. And there are a couple of things. Zeiss has a system that tries to bring a lot of that in, but it's still not as clean as I think it should be. And incidentally, I actually looked at an outside company coming in and building that for me. And we're looking at $150,000 just for my office to incorporate all that stuff into one. We didn't do it because that I figured we could have a staff member print and scan just as quickly as that. So, buddy, what do you think the future of optometric technology looks like? Where do you think that we're going in the future, and how technology is going to help us get there?
That's a great question. I don't know if I can specifically predict, certain things. I don't have a crystal ball. One thing I feel confident about is the trends. So I think there are some pretty clear trends that are in place now, and I think will definitely expand in the future. So one obvious one is digitization. So right now, before someone thinks about going to see an eye doctor, they're being targeted online by practices or by eyewear companies. They are comparing doctors online before choosing a doctor to go see. They can book their appointment online and submit their patient history. Once they're in the practice, as far as their actual clinical examination, the pre-testing is done by digital devices. Their healthcare information is input into an electronic health record by the provider. So we already have a landscape that's mostly digitized right now. And so I think the logical next step would be automation. once you have everything already in the digital space and you have humans doing these digital tasks, the next easy step is to create software that would do those same tasks and, reduce costs, make things more efficient. There's a lot of benefits to automating some of the things that are done manually right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems as if our profession is a super techy profession, and we look at things from so many different angles, whether it's OCT versus a photograph of the retina, whether we're looking at refractions being the same way that they are in the future. So I think you nailed it right on the head, is that this is going to expand and continue to improve. Where do you think we should be looking for improvements in technology? What are you seeing as these advancements? Is this something that we're going to see at trade shows, or are we going to see new ways of getting information?
That's a great point. I think that we have some responsibility on our end to engage with the companies developing these technologies, because what's happening right now is they're going to ophthalmology meetings, presenting their research at ophthalmology meetings, not optometry meetings. And we want to be able to have enough influence to where we have a table to determine how these technologies are going to be rolled out. That way we can, make sure that we're enforcing the best interests of our patients, and also looking out for our profession as well to make sure this is something that's going to help optometry grow and not be something that leaves optometry behind.
Yeah. So true. Well, man, I'm stoked with where you have come in such a short career already. You're changing my life for my practice, making things easier for me with patient care. I'm excited 5 years from now to have talking with you about the other things that you're thinking about, how you're incorporating and changing things for our practice. So on behalf of our profession, thank you for what you're already doing.
Well, thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate your support and just being, on board to, give me advice and give me your thoughts on the things that I've been working on. It's been really helpful. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, hey, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Optometric Insights Show. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. We'll make sure to include in the show notes some links to some of the products that Fayiz has come out with, and some maybe links to his social, so you can stay up on what he's coming out with next. We'll see you next time on the Optometric Insights Show.